Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Adrien Morot, a two-time Oscar nominee who was nominated this year for his work in the hair and makeup category on Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. Adrien, congratulations on that nomination. The second nomination here. What was it like this time around for you to get that recognition, especially for this film?
It's super exciting, as it should be. It's a whirlwind of events and interviews that you have to do on top of your normal work schedule. So it complicates things a little bit, but yeah, I'm very grateful for it all.
Who was the first person you told or like talked to after the nomination, I guess, when you found out?
Oh, that would be my wife.
Nice.
She was the one she was the one sleeping beside me. Like it comes in pretty early in the morning
Yeah.
here and on the West Coast. So
Yeah.
it's definitely she was definitely the first one.
Yeah. So obviously, I know you've worked with Darren Aronofsky multiple times before. When he
Yes.
calls you up for this project, what were those early conversations like, and how did you think about, or how did you begin to wrap your head around how to, create how Charlie would look in this film?
Well, Darren, throughout the multiple projects and years that we've worked together, like it's a no-brainer. When he calls, whatever I'm doing, I'm dropping and I'm going to work with him. That said, when he called for this one and I knew what it was about, how challenging it would be to pull that off. It's that sort of like a career breaker. It can be the end of a career if you don't succeed with this with a project like that. Uh, so a sane person would have ran in the other direction, but I was like, come on, bring it on. Let's see let's see what we're gonna do with this.
So, like, how did you, I guess, like, where did you start? I've seen in other interviews with you. I know you talked about like how you basically had to like kind of create this from like it has never been done before, like this level of makeup and prosthetic work. And I
Mhm.
guess how did you even like think about how you would approach it, I guess, or how to get to like where we are in the film?
Well, there's a series of it's never been done on many levels. That's the thing that's super interesting and rewarding about it. Uh, the fact that most of the time, like immediately when I was doing research at the beginning of the after Darren sent me the script, started looking at what needed to be done, and especially that he wanted to do that super quickly. Darren always works with the same group of collaborators, whether it's his DOP or it's his production designer. Like it's always the same group of people that gets together, and he wanted to take advantage of the early pandemic since everybody had been sort of like everybody's project had been put on hold. Everybody was available. He was like, "Well, I'd like to shoot this in 5 weeks," and I'm used to work with pretty tight deadlines, so I was like immediately going into problem solving mode, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, how could we do this?" And then I read the script, and but that was before I read the script. So I read the script, and I was like, "Okay, well, this is very complicated because the 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 character of Charlie is the main character in the movie. He's there in basically every scene. He's surrounded by a cast of people who's not wearing any kind of prosthetics. So therefore, if it just comes off as a rubber head, you're going to lose your audience immediately. It needs to be to a level of perfection never been achieved before. It can't be distracting. It needs to be, and in the research I was doing there, I was realizing that every time those kind of characters have been portrayed in movies with the help of makeup, it's always been done like where the character is the butt of the joke. It's sort of like a crude comedy, or it's a sci-fi movie where it's like the blob or something
Mhm.
like that. So it's never been portrayed in very flattering terms. And this is the movie is completely the opposite. The movie is not really about that. It's about a story about redemption, and it talks about addiction, but it's coming from a place from the writer Sam Deonter, who wrote something that was close to him because he used to struggle with weight, from what I've he told me about. So it could have been that, or it could have been drugs, or it could have been so. It's really it's not so much about that. So uh, seeing that, I was like, oh my God, like we have a chance to do something that's never been done in terms of portraying obesity with like under a more flattering light, or a more accurate light and respectful, if you will,
Right.
than what's been done before. And then, as I was mentioning, since we were at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a bunch of uncertainty in terms of like how to, like, nobody, like, all the movie shoots were shut down. Nobody knew how we were going to proceed about that, and I didn't have access to Brendan, our main actor. So, as if you know a little bit about makeup effects, normally the way that the first step that we do when we create a character is that we have the actor coming into our shop, and then where we do like full body and head casts, so that we can do duplicates in resin or plaster of their heads, and we can work from that to create the prosthetics. We didn't have access to Brandon here because of the pandemic, so I was like, how can we do this? Like, and then I started thinking that we've been doing tests for many years about doing like prosthetics with the help of 3D printing. But it's never, there's a bunch of reasons why it's never been done so far, because because of like consistency in the different like medium, from the sculpture part in the computer to the 3D scanning, then to the 3D printing, and you're limited by a bunch of different things. So one, the size of the printers, the consistency in all between all those different elements, and achieving prosthetics that are not only detailed enough to give you the result that you're used with more analog methods, is not quite there, or wasn't quite there. And then you also had like, how do you manage to have, like, prosthetics are so thin. It's easy with more traditional materials, where like it's going to be so thin that it's going to blend into the skin into a seamless transition. With computers, for all those reasons, all those different like steps that you have to go through, it's difficult to achieve that. Yet we've been doing this successfully in-house for doing tests in the shop, and I was like, well, maybe one day when we really fine-tune it, we're gonna do this for a real movie. And The Whale came about under all those conditions. I was like, well, I've worked a bunch of times with Darren before. If I fail, maybe he's going to give me more time to do it the traditional way and understand that we can't do it yet in this manner. But much to my surprise, it ended up working so well that not only, like, since we've done The Whale 2 years ago, none of the projects that we've worked on since have been done in the analog method. We completely switched to that. And I'm pretty sure that now that people knows about how we've done this, the entire industry is going to change. And this is the starting point with this movie.
That's amazing. You said something there too before about how like the degree of difficulty on this is so high, because if it doesn't look right, like it's never, you're not gonna, it just has to look right, basically, right? You have to believe that Brendan Fraser is a 600-pound man named Charlie in this movie. When you were watching, like, when did you realize it would look right? I mean, like, I'm sure you, obviously, like you said, you like did everything, and like, but when you saw it on camera, like for the first time, or like, were you like, yes, we got this? And like, how did you know, like, right away that it was going to work, I guess?
It's that's a hard question, because I don't look at
Okay.
anything that I do under that lens. It's never like, oh, I got it right. Woo,
Okay.
good pat on the back. It's never that. It's always like, okay, it sort of works. How can I make it better? So that's
Okay.
I'm always in that mode.
Right. You actually, yeah. No. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
But I'm not completely foolishly blind. Like, I remember when we the thing with that makeup that was great is that even to the naked eye, you couldn't see that he was wearing prosthetics. Like, obviously you knew that Brandon wasn't that big,
Right.
but it was good enough and flawless enough that you could wonder, like, wow, did he gain all that weight, like, for the part? It was like, but still, like, I'm always like thinking, okay, well, here, like, it's okay, I see this and this and that, I'll tweak this. And I remember the first time that he sat down, and it was the beginning of the movie, and he's sitting down on his couch, and he has like this growth of beard, like this about like week old growth of beard on, and he's and I took like a few pictures with my iPhone just to check out um, uh, the lighting on set, and the lighting in the makeup room was quite different.
Hmm.
So just to check out how it looked like under the camera lens, to check out what. And I remember like zooming in and looking. I was like, if you wouldn't know, if you wouldn't know what you're looking at, wouldn't think twice that this is a real guy. So
Right.
that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I want to ask you too. Obviously, we're talking about Brendan here. He's been so acclaimed for his performance and won a SAG award. We're doing this on Monday morning. He won it
Yes,
last night.
amazing.
Incredible work. Is this something where, like, how did you guys work together? And I guess I was wondering, like, does your application of or like process change with his performance like throughout, or and does his performance maybe change because of like what you're doing with the makeup and how you guys kind of work together from a performance level?
Well, it is really a almost like a once in a lifetime event when you can work like it does, or it doesn't happen that often.
Right.
When you have like all when you get to work with an actor of that caliber that just turns your inert pieces of rubber, because that's what it is really, that you glue, even if it has like hair punched in, and the complexion of the skin is looks as perfect as it like to the naked eye, that look is still just like inert material. And until you actually glue it on the actor's face, and that your makeup is not restricting his abilities to act and move around and stuff, and then you see him on set and he starts acting with it, and then it's suddenly you're like the Dr. Frankenstein. Your inanimate creation just becomes alive. And that's probably like, it kind of fills you with pride when that happens. You're like, oh my God. And I was really uh, lucky to be able to be in a position where the what we provided Brendan with is tools, additional tools to create the character. And I've realized that uh, with a few different things. Um, for a few, like when he's in the full body prosthetics, so we'll start with that. When he's in the full body prosthetics, it was incredibly heavy for a few reasons. Like Darren wanted to, some of the directives that he gave me right from the start was that it needed to be accurate, like I said, like respectful, not a joke. And he wanted it to be accurate, not only like in looks, but also in weight, so that it would help Brandon with his performance. And with all this award race and everything, I started like revisiting, because I don't always linger and look at my own stuff. So I started like revisiting all the pictures and video clips that we've done. And the first time that I have like some footage of the very first time that we tried the body prosthetics on Brendan. And although it looks right, it definitely looks heavy, because it was. When he starts walking around with it, it moves right as well, but you can tell that it's just somebody wearing prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
In comparison to what you see in the movie and what I saw on set, that means that he learned to move with it, and he created a character with it. And again, just further showing how strong his performance is. It's not everybody that could have pulled that off. But the thing that's interesting with that is that we also made a lightweight version of those body prosthetics for days where he was more covered in clothes, like when Ellie comes and visits him at the beginning, the first time where he cleans himself up and stuff. And on that morning when we did the makeup, so Brendan would show up around 3:30 in the morning, sit down in the chair, and just before he sat down, I was like, "Oh, Brendan, I have a good news for you for today. You're not gonna have to wear the super heavy body prosthetics and stuff, like, because you're all covered in clothes. We made a lightweight version of it." And he was like, "Really?" And so we tried it on, and I could see that he was sort of like in his own world all throughout the makeup process that then took like 2.5 hours to 2 hours 45. He was in his own world, and then I was like, "Oh, okay." Normally we exchanged jokes and laughed a lot and watched videos as he's doing, but he wasn't that morning. We finished the makeup, finished the hair, And then we're like, "Okay, Brendan, let's get you into the body prosthetics." And he was like, "You know what? I'm gonna go with the regular one." I was like, "Huh? How's that, you bastard? Like, we worked hard on this." And he was like, "You know, that's not Charlie. That's not. I'm not gonna walk the same way. I'm not gonna do if I don't have the." So again, super rewarding, because although it was ridiculously heavy and nobody else would have won, he actually used that as a tool to create a character, and that's where I'm there to, as a tool for both the director and the actor, and with that, and what that happens, it's I couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. And I guess last thing here before, so obviously, like you mentioned, like you've done so much with Aaron. Like, what was his feedback like in the end, and like how, like at you know, like how as you guys were like succeeding in this and wrapping it up, and what it was like, how did he like, what was that like, and like what did he say about like your work here on this? I guess.
Uh, I, and this is where me and Darren get along very well. He's not he's a bit like me, where he doesn't look at what works and comment on it.
Sure.
For if it works, it works. It's a given. He's always striving for perfection and elevating everything else, for like everything to a higher level. So he's doesn't always mention when stuff is working, but you will know if it doesn't. So when he doesn't say much, that means that we're in a good place.
That's good. I feel like, I mean, that's probably why he's such a success. Maybe also as a filmmaker, he definitely knows his stuff, right? Yeah. So
Well, I'll tell you something that was really interesting is that when the movie, like I was involved so closely with that movie that it's rare that I actually follow when it comes out in festivals and I read the reviews. But I did for this one when it first came out in Venice, and I'll tell you, like, because for me the main thing that was super important is that the makeup was not a distraction, because I was like, I even wondered at first if I won my name in the credits.
hmm,
I was like, because you should believe that this guy is that of that weight.
right.
I really don't want it to be a distraction. And all the reviews came in, like 20, 50, 80 reviews. When the makeup was being mentioned, which was rare, it was always under positive light, which was great. But I would say 95% of the time, they didn't mention the makeup at all. And I was like, yes, I succeeded. That means that it wasn't a distraction in any way. They didn't even think about it. They didn't think about it so much that they didn't even mention it in the review, which is great.
It's true. I mean, you watch the movie, it's hard, like you said, like immediately you're just like, I'm buying this, right? You kind of like are in,
Yep.
and it does work. Adrien Morot, an Oscar nominee in the best hair makeup category this year for The Whale, a 2-time nominee overall. Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Of course. My pleasure.